I remember the exact moment when everything started to change. Kate had just walked in the door from the gym, her face lit up like she was on top of the world. She didn't even say hi like she used to. Instead, she gave me this half smile and went straight to the kitchen. I stood there for a second, trying to figure out when it became normal for us to barely talk anymore. It wasn't always like that, though. When we first met, things were different. Good, different. Kate and I had one of those whirlwind romances. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, and from the first conversation, it was like we just clicked. She had a sharp wit, and I liked that. I was 30, working as an accountant, and feeling pretty settled in my life. She was a couple of years younger, working in marketing and full of energy. It wasn't long before we were spending nearly every day together. We got married after about 3 years of dating. At the time, I thought it was the right move for both of us. We didn't have any grand plans for a big family or a huge house, just a simple, comfortable life together. After we got married, Kate decided to take a break from work. She said she wanted to focus on us and enjoy the time together without the stress of her job. I was making enough to support us both, so I didn't think twice about it. To me, it was temporary. I figured she'd get back into work when she was ready. We bought a small house in the suburbs, nothing flashy, but it was ours. We had some savings, just enough to feel secure, but we didn't live beyond our means. At first, everything felt good. Kate seemed happy, and I was happy. We'd cook dinner together most nights, binge watch whatever show was popular at the time, and take weekend trips out of town. I didn't mind the extra responsibility at work because I had this idea in my head that I was doing it for us. But slowly, things started to shift. Kate wasn't as interested in doing things together anymore. At first, I chalked it up to her wanting some space, which is normal in any marriage, right? But her space turned into long days out with friends or hours spent at the gym. She'd come home, say a quick, "Hey," and then disappear into her phone or the TV. I tried asking her what was going on, but she'd just brush it off, saying everything was fine and that I was overthinking. I didn't see the cracks forming at that point. Maybe I didn't want to. I just kept telling myself that all marriages go through rough patches, and this was ours. It would pass. Still, something was off. It wasn't like we were fighting, but the connection we had in the beginning was gone. I started to miss the little things, like how we used to talk about our day, laugh at stupid jokes, or even just sit in comfortable silence. Now it was like we were just coexisting in the same house. Then there was the money situation. With Kate not working, we were relying entirely on my income. I never once complained about it, though. I liked the idea of taking care of her, of giving her the time to figure out what she wanted to do next. But she didn't seem interested in going back to work. Months turned into years, and the topic never came up again. I didn't push it, but I started to wonder if this was going to be our new normal. So here I was, carrying most of the weight financially and emotionally, but somehow still feeling like I was the one falling short. Kate was different, distant, like she was living a completely separate life from me, even though we slept in the same bed every night. And the worst part? I didn't know how to fix it, or if she even wanted me to. That's when I realized I wasn't losing her. I had already lost her. It is hard to say when exactly things started to shift between us, but there was a point where I just couldn't ignore it anymore. Kate wasn't the same. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, just small things. She'd get up earlier than usual, spend more time getting ready, and then head out the door without saying much. She'd be gone for hours, sometimes all day, and when she came back, she wasn't really present. I'd ask her about her day and try to make conversation, but her answers were short, like she didn't want to talk to me. I noticed she was spending a lot of time at the gym, which I thought was great at first. I mean, who doesn't want to stay healthy? But then it became excessive. She'd go to the gym almost every day, sometimes twice a day. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured she had found a new hobby, something to keep her occupied since she wasn't working. But even when she wasn't at the gym, she wasn't home either. She was always out with friends, or so she said. I didn't question it. Maybe I should have. Then there was the way she started pulling back physically and emotionally. It was like she had built a wall between us. She wasn't affectionate anymore. No more random hugs or kisses, no more late night talks in bed. And when I'd try to get close, she just pushed me away. I'd ask her if something was wrong, if she was unhappy or stressed about something, but she always gave me the same answer. I'm fine, you're overthinking it. But I wasn't overthinking it. Things were changing, and I could feel it. One night, she came home later than usual. I had made dinner like I usually did, but she didn't seem to care. She just said she had already eaten and went straight upstairs. No explanation, no apology. I sat at the table by myself, staring at the empty plate in front of me, wondering what the hell was going on. That was the moment when I realized this wasn't just a rough patch anymore. Then there were the excuses. She'd canceled plans with me last minute, saying she was too tired or that something came up with her friends. And when we did spend time together, it was awkward and forced. We'd sit in silence, both of us on our phones, barely saying a word to each other. It was like living with a stranger. I knew I had to confront her about it, so one evening, I sat her down and asked her straight up if something was going on. I expected her to deny it, maybe tell me I was imagining things again, but instead, she got defensive. She accused me of being paranoid and said I was acting insecure for no reason. We argued, which was something we hardly ever did before. But instead of feeling closer afterward, like you sometimes do after hashing things out, it felt like we were even further apart. That was when I started to feel this pit in my stomach. Something was definitely wrong, but I didn't know what. I started paying more attention to her, noticing the way she'd act whenever she got a text or a phone call. She'd turn her phone screen away from me or leave the room to answer it. When I asked her who it was, she'd just say it was one of her friends from the gym. But it didn't sit right with me. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who snoops through his wife's phone or accuses her of things without proof. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something, that there was more going on than she was telling me. Every time her phone would buzz, I'd tense up, waiting to see if she'd look nervous or guilty. And then one night, it happened. I was in the shower and I heard her phone vibrate. I don't know what came over me, but I glanced at the screen. There it was, a message from some guy named Derek. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby," it said. That was when everything fell apart. When I saw that message from Derek, time just stopped. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby." I read it twice, 3 times, hoping I'd misunderstood, but it was right there in front of me. My mind was racing, and I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to believe it was just a misunderstanding, a joke maybe, but deep down, I knew. I stood there for a few minutes, staring at the screen, trying to figure out what to do next. I was in shock, but I knew I couldn't just pretend it didn't happen. I waited for her to come out of the bathroom. When she did, I didn't say a word. I just handed her the phone and asked her to explain. Her face changed immediately. At first, she tried to play it off, saying it was nothing, just a friendly joke between her and Derek, the trainer from her gym. But I wasn't buying it, not with the way she looked so caught off guard. So I read some of the messages out loud to her. The plans they made, the pet names, the future they were talking about, none of it included me. She couldn't deny it anymore. That's when she just looked at me, cold as ice, and said, "I want a divorce." No apology, no guilt, no remorse, just those 4 words like it was the easiest thing in the world for her to say. I stood there speechless for a moment, waiting for her to explain herself, but she didn't. She admitted she had been seeing Derek for months. Apparently, it started at the gym, just casual conversations that turned into something more. She told me she hadn't been happy in our marriage for a while and that Derek made her feel alive again. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just leaving me for another guy. She had already checked out of our marriage a long time ago. This wasn't a sudden decision for her. It was something she had been planning for months, while I was in the dark, still thinking we could fix things. But what really threw me was how she handled it after. She didn't cry. She didn't beg for forgiveness or try to justify what she did. She just laid it all out there, cold and indifferent, like it was some business transaction. Then, without missing a beat, she started talking about splitting up our assets. She said she wanted half of everything. The house, the savings, everything we had built together. And she actually had the nerve to say she deserved it because she had sacrificed her career to support mine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just that she cheated on me. It was the fact that she had zero remorse and was already focused on what she could take from me. I just stood there listening to her talk, like our entire relationship had been reduced to a financial negotiation. It was surreal. I told her if she wanted a divorce, fine, I wasn't going to fight it. But what she didn't know, what I hadn't even thought about until that moment, was that almost everything we owned was in my father's name. Years ago, my dad had suggested that I keep most of my assets in his name, just in case something ever went wrong. At the time, it felt unnecessary, but I agreed because it seemed like smart financial planning. Now it was my saving grace. On paper, I didn't own much, just a modest bank account, my car, and a few other things. The house, it was technically my father's. The bulk of our savings, also in accounts controlled by him. I didn't tell Kate this right away. I just listened as she outlined all the things she expected to get from the divorce, fully believing she was entitled to half of everything. She even had this smug look on her face, like she was already imagining her new life with Derek, living off the money she thought she was going to take from me. But I wasn't going to let her win that easily. I stayed calm, maybe too calm for her liking. She probably expected me to freak out or get emotional, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I just agreed. I said we could split things up in life, go through mediation, whatever she wanted. And honestly, the look on her face when I didn't argue back was almost worth all the pain. She was confused, maybe even a little suspicious, but she didn't push it. I knew that the real battle was only just beginning. As soon as Kate told me she wanted a divorce, it was like she flipped a switch. She wasted no time getting into business mode. A couple of days later, she brought up the topic of dividing our assets again. She was confident, almost too confident, and that's when I realized she really thought she was walking away with half of everything. She said she wanted the house, half of the savings, and even mentioned alimony, which I thought was ridiculous. I had supported her for years while she stayed at home, and now she thought she was entitled to even more. But I stayed calm. I didn't argue. I just nodded along as she laid out her demands, knowing she had no idea what was actually coming. Here's the thing. Kate didn't know that most of what she wanted wasn't technically mine to give. Like I said before, my father is a smart man. He had suggested years ago that I put the house in his name and keep my larger savings in accounts he controlled. Back then, it didn't feel like something I needed, but I went along with it because it made sense financially. It was a way to protect myself if anything ever went wrong, whether it was debt, legal issues, or in this case, a cheating spouse. So when Kate sat there expecting to leave with half of everything we had, I knew she was in for a rude awakening. The house in my dad's name, the majority of the savings, not mine to split. What she didn't know was that the only things I had in my name were a modest bank account, my car, and a few other small assets. On paper, I didn't have much for her to take, but I didn't tell her any of this right away. I figured it was better to let the lawyers handle it. I agreed to mediation to keep things simple and avoid a drawn-out court battle. Kate was all for it. She thought mediation meant she could walk in, make her demands, and walk out with a significant chunk of my assets. She was already acting like the money was hers. The first mediation session was a disaster for her. My lawyer and I came prepared with all the necessary paperwork showing exactly what was and wasn't in my name. Kate and her lawyer looked confused at first. Then when they realized how little I had on paper, their faces fell. It was almost comical watching her lawyer scramble, trying to make sense of the situation. They had no idea that the house and most of the savings were legally my father's. Kate's confident smile disappeared. She tried to argue, claiming that she was entitled to more because she had sacrificed her career for me. Her lawyer kept pushing, saying that there had to be hidden assets somewhere. They even suggested that I was lying about my finances, which wasn't true. I had given them everything exactly as it was. I wasn't hiding anything. I just didn't have what they thought I did. And that's when Kate's attitude changed. The calm, detached demeanor she had before was gone. She started getting angry, accusing me of hiding money, saying I had tricked her into believing we had more than we did. But it was all there in black and white. The truth was, I had always kept a low financial profile. We lived comfortably but modestly, and I never gave her any reason to think we had more than what I told her. After that session, things got uglier. Kate hired a more aggressive lawyer, one of those types who wants to squeeze every penny they can from the other side. They filed motion after motion, trying to dig into my finances, but every time they hit a wall. My lawyer made sure that everything was transparent and legal. There was nothing for them to find because I wasn't hiding anything. Then they turned their attention to my father. They tried to involve him in the process, claiming that he had somehow funneled money to me under the table, or that I was using his accounts to hide assets. That part really pissed me off. My father had nothing to do with this, and dragging him into our divorce was a low blow. Fortunately, my lawyer shut that down quickly. Legally, there was nothing they could do to touch my father's assets. But it showed me just how desperate Kate was getting. She didn't care about the marriage anymore. All she wanted was the money she thought she was entitled to. But no matter how hard she pushed, she wasn't going to get it. I wasn't going to let her take what wasn't hers. After that first mediation session fell apart, things between us escalated fast. Kate was furious. She couldn't accept the reality that she wasn't getting what she thought she was entitled to. Her lawyer kept throwing accusations, saying I was hiding money and manipulating the situation, but it was all nonsense. They had nothing. Everything was exactly as I said it was. Most of the big assets weren't in my name, and legally they had no claim to them. But that didn't stop Kate from trying to drag things out. She hired a forensic accountant to investigate further, convinced there was some hidden pot of gold somewhere. Honestly, I wasn't even worried. At first, I thought maybe they'd dig up something small, maybe a mistake I didn't catch. But after talking to my lawyer, it was clear they weren't going to find anything because there was nothing to find. All my finances were out in the open. Everything I declared was accurate. Still, I knew this was going to make the divorce process longer and more painful. Kate was grasping at straws, and her desperation was starting to show. One of the things that really got to me during this time was the way Kate tried to paint herself as the victim. She was telling everyone, our friends, her family, even people online, that I had manipulated her financially, that I had hidden money from her and left her with nothing. She even went as far as to say I was controlling during our marriage, which was a complete lie. I never controlled her. She made her own choices, including not working and spending her days at the gym. But now in her mind, it was all part of some grand plan of mine to trap her. It was hard hearing that from mutual friends. People I thought knew us better started to question me, wondering if there was some truth to what she was saying. She was good at playing the victim, and for a while it worked. But our closest friends, they knew better. They saw through her stories and knew I wasn't that guy. Still, the damage was done. Some people took her side without even bothering to ask me what was really happening. And then there were the social media posts. Kate got creative with her smear campaign. She started posting these vague, passive-aggressive updates about narcissistic partners and being lied to for years. People ate it up, commenting with all the sympathy in the world, while she was busy trying to ruin my reputation. I stayed focused on the legal side of things. My lawyer and I made sure to document everything. Every ridiculous demand she made, every time she accused me of something in mediation, every message she sent that tried to manipulate the situation. We kept track of it all. I even started collecting evidence of her affair with Derek. Not that adultery plays a huge role in most divorce settlements, but I wasn't going to let her walk away from this with her hands clean. I had screenshots of their messages, photos they took together, even a few statements from her friends who knew about the affair, but had stayed quiet until now. It wasn't about humiliating her. I wasn't trying to get revenge. I just wanted the truth to come out, plain and simple. If she was going to drag my name through the mud, I was going to make sure the real story came to light. Meanwhile, things between her and Derek weren't going as smoothly as she'd hoped. When she first told him she was leaving me for him, he was all in. They had this fantasy of running off together and starting a new life. But when the divorce process started to get complicated, when it became clear she wasn't getting a big payout, Derek began to back off. He wasn't as invested as she thought. From what I heard, he started to lose clients at the gym because of the scandal. Turns out people didn't want to work with a personal trainer who was involved with a married woman. Kate's dream of a new life with Derek started to fall apart. He wasn't willing to take on her financial baggage, and she began to realize that maybe this wasn't going to be the fairy tale she imagined. It was almost pathetic watching her scramble. She had blown up her life expecting everything to fall into place, and now it was all crashing down around her. As for me, I stayed focused. I wasn't going to let her manipulation or her attempts to smear me distract me from what I needed to do. I was going to see this through to the end, no matter how long it took. When we finally got to court, I knew things were going to get messy. Kate had spent months dragging this divorce through the mud, and I was exhausted, but I was also ready. I had spent so much time gathering evidence, working with my lawyer, and making sure every detail was in order. There was no way I was going to let her walk out of there with more than she deserved. Kate was the first to testify. She walked up to the stand like she was about to deliver the performance of her life. And honestly, that's exactly what it was, a performance. She started crying almost immediately, telling the judge how I had lied to her throughout our marriage, how I had manipulated her finances, and how she had sacrificed everything to support me. She made herself out to be this perfect, devoted wife who was blindsided by the divorce and left with nothing. It was all part of her game, playing the victim, hoping the judge would feel sorry for her. But then my lawyer started asking her questions. He didn't let her get away with any of it. He brought up the affair, showed the judge the messages between her and Derek, and laid out the timeline of when the cheating had started. He exposed her for what she was, someone who had checked out of the marriage long before she ever said anything to me. And it was clear she wasn't prepared for that. Her story started falling apart. She tried to backpedal, saying the affair was just a mistake and had nothing to do with why she wanted the divorce. But by then, it was too late. The damage was done. When it was my turn to testify, I kept it simple. I didn't want to come across as bitter or vengeful. I just stuck to the facts. I told the court how I had found out about the affair, how Kate had admitted to cheating, and how she had demanded half of everything we owned, even though most of it wasn't in my name. I explained that I had tried to handle things through mediation, that I hadn't hidden any assets, and that everything I presented was accurate and legal. I think the judge appreciated that I wasn't trying to vilify her, but I wasn't sugarcoating anything either. I made it clear that I wasn't the villain she had painted me to be. We called a few witnesses too. My father took the stand to explain that the house was legally his and that the savings Kate was after weren't mine to give. His testimony was crucial because it shut down her entire argument about being entitled to half of everything. Then one of my coworkers testified about my salary and the way our pay structure worked, showing that there was no hidden income or under-the-table payments like Kate's lawyer had suggested. Every angle they tried to attack from was covered, and they couldn't find a single crack in the story. The judge took everything into account, and I could tell that Kate's emotional testimony didn't sway him as much as she had hoped. He saw through it. He saw through all of it. In the end, the verdict was clear. Kate wasn't getting what she thought she would. The judge ruled that the house and the majority of the assets were not hers to claim. The only thing she walked away with was a small amount of spousal support, just enough to cover her legal fees, but nowhere near the lifestyle she thought she'd maintain. When the judge read the decision, I felt this huge sense of relief wash over me. After months of stress, accusations, and the fear that I could lose everything, it was over. The system had worked in my favor, and Kate wasn't going to get what she wanted. She started crying again, but this time, it wasn't for show. She was genuinely angry, maybe even shocked that things hadn't gone her way. She stormed out of the courtroom, yelling about how unfair everything was, and how I had manipulated the system. But the truth was, I hadn't manipulated anything. I just protected myself legally and financially, and now it was done. After the trial, I walked out of the courtroom, finally able to breathe again. My phone was blowing up with messages from friends and family, all congratulating me on the outcome. They knew how much I had been through, and it felt good knowing that this chapter of my life was finally closed. Kate, on the other hand, wasn't finished. She had a full-blown meltdown outside the courthouse, screaming in front of a small crowd about how I had lied and how I had ruined her life. But no one was really listening. Even her lawyer seemed tired of it all, like he knew this wasn't going to go anywhere. She didn't have the money to appeal, and everyone involved knew it. As I walked away, I felt a mix of emotions. There was relief, sure, but also sadness. This wasn't how I thought my life would go. I had loved Kate once. We had a life together, or at least I thought we did. But that life was gone now. It was time to move on.